Chapter 1. The Reluctant Messenger. My name is Marco Benedetti. For 15 years, I served as private secretary to Cardinal Alessandro Toretti at the Vatican. I thought I knew all the secrets of the sacred corridors, all the conspiracies whispered between the marble pillars of St. Peter's Basilica. I was wrong. It all began on an October morning. Roman autumn painted the leaves of the Vatican gardens in golden hues. I was organizing the Cardinal's correspondence when a discreet knock sounded at the office door. It was Sister Margherita, an elderly nun who worked in the deepest archives of the Vatican. "Marco," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "The Holy Father wishes to see you." Immediately, my heart raced. In 15 years, the Pope had never requested my presence directly. I followed the sister through labyrinthine corridors, passing millennial frescoes and statues that seemed to watch me with stone eyes. We arrived at a door I had never noticed before, hidden behind a tapestry embroidered with symbols I didn't recognize. Pope Francis was seated behind a simple wooden table, but his eyes carried a weight beyond his years. Before him lay a letter sealed with the papal seal. "Marco," his voice was grave, laden with seriousness that made me tremble. "I need you to deliver this letter personally to Professor Dmitry Volkov in St. Petersburg. Petersburg, you must leave today." "Your Holiness, but why me? Surely there are more qualified diplomats." The Pope raised his hand, silencing me. "This mission requires someone discreet. Someone I trust completely." He paused, studying my face. "Marco, what do you know about the nature of divine communication?" The question caught me off guard. "Well, Your Holiness, I believe God speaks through his works, through Scripture. And what if I told you that sometimes he speaks through means our human minds can barely comprehend?" The Pope stood, walking to the window overlooking the gardens. "Will you accept this mission, Marco?" There was no way to refuse. 2 hours later, I was at Leonardo da Vinci Airport, the papal letter carefully stored in a leather case that never left my chest. Chapter 2. The City of White Shadows. St. Petersburg welcomed me with its cutting October cold and a sky that seemed eternally twilight. Professor Dmitry Volkov lived in an old mansion near the Griboidov Canal, a building that breathed history and mystery. When I rang the bell, the door opened almost immediately, as if he had been expecting me. Volkov was a tall, thin man, about 60 years old, with disheveled gray hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through people. "Marco Benedetti," he said in perfect Italian, before I had even introduced myself. "I was waiting for you." The interior of the house was a labyrinth of books, ancient manuscripts, and scientific equipment I couldn't identify. Modern computers shared space with medieval scrolls, creating an atmosphere that defied time. "Did the Pope tell you what the letter contains?" Volkov asked, preparing tea in an ornate samovar. "No, Professor. Only that it was of extreme importance." Volkov nodded slowly. "Dmitry is fine. And yes, it is of extreme importance." He paused, studying my face. "Do you believe in extraterrestrial life, Marco?" The question surprised me. I never thought much about it. The Church doesn't oppose the possibility. It doesn't oppose, no. In fact, the Vatican has one of the world's most advanced astronomical observatories. Volkov served tea in 2 delicate cups. "But what if I told you, it's not just about possibility?" I felt a chill run down my spine. I handed over the letter with slightly trembling hands. Volkov opened it with reverent care. When he began to read, his expression changed completely. His eyes widened. His hands trembled almost imperceptibly. "Madonna mia," he whispered in Italian. Then, looking at me, "Marco, did you read this letter?" "No, of course not. That would be a grave violation of papal trust. You should have read it." Volkov folded the letter carefully. "Because now, you're involved in something much bigger than you imagine." Chapter 3. Revelations in the Laboratory. Volkov led me to the basement of the mansion, where I discovered a laboratory that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Giant screens displayed complex graphs, equations that hurt my eyes just to look at, and images of deep space pulsing with strange lights. I'm an astrophysicist, Volkov explained, but also a linguist. My specialty is non-human communication. He showed me a series of signals captured by radio telescopes around the world, complex mathematical patterns, repeating with impossible precision. 3 years ago, we began receiving these transmissions. At first, we thought it was just cosmic noise, but the patterns were too specific, too intentional. Volkov touched one of the screens. It took 2 years to decode the first message. And what did it say? It said, "Greet the representative of Peter." I felt my blood freeze. Representative of Peter, the Pope? Exactly. They knew about the papacy, Marco. They knew about our religion, our structure, and they continued sending messages, increasingly complex, increasingly personal. Volkov showed me translations of subsequent messages. They spoke about Christian theology, with a depth that rivaled the greatest thinkers of the Church. They questioned aspects of doctrine, proposed interpretations of Scripture that were simultaneously alien and profoundly spiritual. Did the Pope know about this? I was the one who informed the Vatican. I expected skepticism, maybe even hostility. But the Pope, he surprised me. He said he had been waiting for something like this. Volkov handed me the papal letter. Read it. With trembling hands, I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was unmistakably papal, but the words, "My children of the stars, we receive your messages with humility and joy. If you truly seek to understand the divine love that permeates all creation, come in peace. The Church opens its arms to all children of God, no matter under which skies they were born." This is, I began, an official response from the Catholic Church to the first confirmed extraterrestrial communication in human history, Volkov completed. And you, Marco, are the messenger. Chapter 4, The Third Contact. But how am I going to deliver this letter? I asked, still processing the magnitude of what was happening. Volkov smiled for the first time since I'd met him. They gave us very specific instructions. He led me to another room, where even more sophisticated equipment awaited. In the center, a kind of transmitter pulsed with a soft blue light. The coordinates were provided in the last transmission, a point in space approximately 4.2 light years from here, Alpha Centauri system. You're going to transmit the letter? Not exactly. Volkov handed me a small device that looked like a tablet, but made of a material I couldn't identify. They sent this a week ago. A gift, you could say. The device activated at my touch. An interface appeared, not in any human language I knew, but somehow I understood it perfectly. It was as if the information was transmitted directly to my mind. How is this possible? Technology that's thousands of years ahead of ours. But Marco, there's something else. The letter you're carrying. I read it completely. There are parts that weren't written by the Pope. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Volkov showed me the letter again, pointing to certain phrases. See these words here? The syntax, the structure. It's identical to the messages we received from space. Someone, or something, added content to the papal letter. I looked at the paper with new perspective. Some phrases really did seem different, more direct, almost mechanical, in their grammatical perfection. You're saying that our extraterrestrial correspondent is already on Earth, Marco, and has direct access to the Pope. Chapter 5. Fragmented Memories. That night, in the hotel near the Hermitage, I couldn't sleep. Volkov's words echoed in my mind. I tried to remember the last months at the Vatican, looking for signs I might have missed. Then I remembered Sister Margarita. She had appeared at the Vatican about 6 months ago, transferred from a remote convent in Sicily. Always silent, always efficient. But there was something different about her. The way she walked, as if constantly calculating distances. How her eyes sometimes went vacant for a few seconds, as if receiving information from elsewhere. And there were other strange things. The Pope had begun having more frequent visions, moments of deep contemplation, where he seemed to be listening to something no one else could perceive. Cardinal Toretti had commented on this, concerned about the Holy Father's mental health. I grabbed my phone and called Rome, directly to the Cardinal's private line. "Marco, where are you? The Pope said you had traveled on business, but gave no details." "Your Eminence, I need to ask a strange question. Sister Margherita, did you check her references when she arrived?" There was a long pause. "Marco, what kind of question is that? Please, it's important." "Well, now that you mention it, there were some irregularities. The convent she supposedly came from had no records of her, but the Pope insisted she stay, said she was necessary." I hung up, my mind in turmoil. I returned to Volkov's laboratory the next morning, with a theory that terrified me. Chapter 6. The Truth in the Data. "Dmitri," I said, finding him analyzing new data in the laboratory, "what if they're not coming? What if they're already here?" Volkov turned slowly, and I saw in his eyes that he had reached the same conclusion. "I showed the letter to a handwriting analysis expert this morning," he said. "Officially, it was written by the same hand. But there are micro-variations in pen pressure, inconsistencies in writing speed that suggest what? That whoever wrote certain parts has slightly different motor control, as if it were someone learning to imitate papal handwriting," I completed. Volkov nodded gravely. "Marco, I need to tell you something else. The transmission stopped exactly 6 months ago, when Sister Margherita arrived at the Vatican." "Exactly." We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of discovery hanging between us like a heavy cloud. "So, the letter I'm carrying is direct communication between two intelligent species, using the Pope as an unwitting intermediary," Volkov completed. "The question is, what is their real intention?" Chapter 7. Decoding the Intentions. We spent the rest of the day analyzing every word of the papal letter. Volkov had developed software that identified non-human linguistic patterns, and the results were disturbing. Approximately 40% of the letter's content had been altered or added. The modifications were subtle, but completely changed the tone and meaning of certain passages. Where the Pope had written, "If you truly seek to understand divine love," the altered version read, "If you truly seek to absorb divine knowledge." A subtle difference, but significant. "They're changing the message," I observed. "But why?" Volkov pointed to a series of equations on the screen. "Look at these patterns. They're not just linguistic, they're mathematical. Each alteration follows a specific progression, as if they were calibrating something." Calibrating what? Our response, our understanding, maybe even our evolution. The word evolution hung in the air like a threat. Suddenly, I understood the magnitude of what was happening. This wasn't about first contact. This was about intervention. "Dmitri, what happens if I deliver this letter?" He looked at me with an expression that mixed fear and fascination. "Honestly, I don't know. But I think this might be the last truly human decision any of us will make." Chapter 8. The Messenger's Choice. That night, I walked through the streets of St. Petersburg, trying to process everything I had discovered. The city seemed different now, as if I was seeing through a filter that revealed hidden layers of reality. I observed the people on the streets, wondering how many of them knew we were on the threshold of a fundamental change in human history. How many had already been influenced. I returned to the hotel and found a message waiting at reception. It was from Cardinal Toretti. Marco, urgent situation. Sister Margherita has disappeared. We can't find any record of her previous existence. The Pope is different. Return immediately. My suspicion was confirmed. Sister Margherita wasn't human. But what exactly was she, and what had she done to the Pope? I called Volkov. Dmitri, we need to transmit this letter today. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. If we don't, they'll continue working behind the scenes, manipulating our leadership, our faith. At least this way, we'll have some control over the process, or we'll be handing over our species on a silver platter. It's a risk we have to take. Chapter 9. The Transmission. I returned to Volkov's laboratory at dawn. He had spent the night preparing the equipment for transmission. The alien device was connected to his computers through cables that seemed to move on their own. Before we do this, Volkov said, there's something you need to know. I managed to decode the last transmissions we received. They're not interested in conquest, in the traditional sense. Then what do they want? Synthesis. They want to create something new, a fusion between human consciousness and theirs. They believe this will represent the next evolutionary step for both species. And the Church? Why did they start with the Vatican? Volkov smiled sadly. Because faith is the most powerful software humanity has ever developed. If they can integrate it with their technology, they'll have created something truly transcendent. I looked at the letter in my hands. Every word seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. Do you think we're doing the right thing? I think we lost the choice a long time ago. Now, we can only try to influence the outcome. I placed the letter in the alien device's scanner. The machine activated with a sound that wasn't quite a sound, more like a vibration that resonated directly in the bones. The letter's words appeared on the screen, but now I could see the hidden layers of meaning, the intertwined codes that transformed a simple papal correspondence into a complex interstellar negotiation. Chapter 10. The Echo of Response. The response came faster than we expected, not through Volkov's equipment, but through the alien device, which lit up with blinding intensity. When the light dimmed, we found a new message on the screen. This time, the words formed directly in Portuguese. Messenger Benedetti, your delivery has been received with gratitude. The synthesis process will begin as agreed. Your voluntary participation has been noted and will be rewarded. The transformation will be gentle. Voluntary participation? I asked, confused. Volkov was pale. Marco, they knew you would read the letter. They knew you would come to me. They knew you would question everything. That means you were never just a messenger. You were a test to see if humanity would question, would resist, would try to understand before accepting. Reality hit me like a cold wave. And did we pass the test? Or we failed spectacularly? I still don't know. Another message appeared on the screen. Integration will begin at points of greatest spiritual influence. Rome, Jerusalem, Mecca, Varanasi, Lhasa. Humanity will be elevated gradually. Resistance is futile, but will be respected. Chapter 11. Return to Rome. I flew back to Rome in a state of controlled terror. During the flight, I tried to imagine what it would be like to face a pope who might no longer be completely human, in a church that was becoming something beyond what its founders had ever imagined. Fiumicino Airport seemed normal, but I now saw details that had previously gone unnoticed. The excessive precision of the staff, the almost mechanical synchronization of their actions. How many had already been altered? At the Vatican, Cardinal Toretti waited for me with an expression of relief and concern. Marco, thank God you're back. The Pope is different, more serene, wiser. but sometimes he speaks about things that shouldn't be possible to know. What kind of things? Historical events that aren't in any archive, scientific knowledge that not even our best theologians possess. And this morning, what happened this morning? He announced that we will receive visitors. He said the church will undergo a cosmic renewal. I found the Pope in his private quarters, kneeling before a crucifix. But when he turned to greet me, his eyes were different, still kind, still human. But there was something more, a depth that seemed to extend to the stars. "Marco, my son, how was your journey?" "Your Holiness, the letter was delivered." The Pope nodded. "Yes, I know. They informed me." "They informed? Marco, are you afraid?" The question caught me off guard. Yes, Your Holiness. I am very afraid. It's natural, but I can assure you that what is happening is part of a much greater plan, a plan that includes all creation. Chapter 12, the New Gospel. In the following weeks, subtle changes began to appear throughout the Vatican. The Pope's sermons acquired a new dimension, speaking about cosmic brothers and the universal family of God. The faithful were initially confused, but gradually began to accept and even embrace these new perspectives. New nuns and priests arrived from various parts of the world, all with the same strange serenity I had noticed in Sister Margherita. When I tried to locate their previous records, I found only holes, lives that seemed carefully constructed, but didn't withstand deeper investigation. Most disturbing was how everything seemed natural. The changes were implemented so gradually, so logically integrated with existing doctrine, that even the most conservative began to accept. I received another call from Volkov. His voice was different, calmer. "Marco, they visited me." "What do you mean, visited?" 3 of them came to my house last night. Not with ships or fantastic technology. They simply arrived, as if they had always been here. And what did they say? That the process is working better than they expected. The synthesis between our spirituality and their knowledge is creating something new, something neither species could achieve alone. "Dmitri, are you still you?" A long pause. "That's a more complex question than you imagine, Marco. I am me, but I am also more. I can see connections that previously escaped me, understand truths that were once mysteries." "Were you altered?" "Elevated, that's the word they use. And Marco, you'll be next." Chapter 13, the Convocation. 2 weeks later, the Pope called me for a private meeting. This time, we weren't alone. 5 hooded figures were present, and even without seeing their faces, I knew they weren't completely human. "Marco," the Pope began, "the time has come for you to fully understand your role in this great work." One of the figures approached and lowered her hood. It was Sister Margherita, but now I could see beyond the human appearance. Her eyes contained galaxies. Her skin had an almost translucent quality, revealing patterns of light moving beneath the surface. "You have served well, messenger." Her voice was the same, but carried harmonies that vibrated at frequencies humans shouldn't be able to perceive. "The letter you delivered initiated the final phase of our integration." "Integration of what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of 2 forms of consciousness that evolved separately for millions of years," another figure responded. "You developed spirituality, faith, the ability to believe in something greater than yourselves. We developed knowledge, technology, the ability to manipulate reality at fundamental levels. Together," Sister Margherita continued, "we will create a new form of existence, one that transcends the limitations of both flesh and machine." The Pope stood. "Marco, they showed me visions of what we can become, a humanity freed from pain, ignorance, death, a humanity that can touch the stars, not just with ships, but with pure consciousness. And free will? I asked. And our essential humanity? It will not be lost, one of the figures assured. It will be expanded. You will retain everything that is Marco Benedetti, but also become something more. Chapter 14, The Transformation. They gave me time to decide, a week to contemplate the offer that had been made. During these days, I observed the changes continuing around me. Cardinal Toretti had ascended 3 days earlier, and now carried the same strange serenity as the others. I tried to contact the outside world, but discovered that all communications were being filtered, not blocked, just directed through channels that ensured information was properly contextualized. On the 5th day, I received an unexpected visit. It was Volkov, but something was different. His eyes had that same galactic depth I had seen in Sister Margarita. Marco. I came to say goodbye to the part of me that was purely human. Dmitri, what did they do to you? Nothing I didn't allow. The experience is indescribable. I can perceive the music of the spheres, understand the equations that govern reality, feel the connection between all living things. But are you still you? I am me, and I am more. Marco, don't be afraid. It's like waking from a dream and discovering you were sleeping in a world much smaller than you imagined. Volkov handed me a small device. If you decide not to accept ascension, this equipment will allow you to send a message to other resistance networks forming around the world. Yes, there are others who question, who resist. And if I accept, then you'll join the first generation of new humanity. Chapter 15, The Hidden Resistance. That night, I used Volkov's device. To my surprise, I was immediately connected to a network of individuals around the world who had noticed the changes and were documenting the integration process. There was a physicist in Tokyo who had detected similar anomalies in Buddhist temples, a rabbi in Jerusalem reporting angelic visitors in the old city, and a shaman in Peru who spoke of star spirits communicating with the guardians of ancestral traditions. The pattern was clear. They were working through humanity's most influential spiritual institutions, using our own faith as a vehicle for transformation. But why religion? I asked during an encrypted conference. The Peruvian shaman, who identified herself only as Mama Killa, responded, because faith is the only place where you urban humans still accept mysteries, without need for scientific proof. It's the only domain where the impossible is still possible. The Japanese physicist, Dr. Tanaka, added, my analysis suggests they studied our species for decades, perhaps centuries. They identified religion as our most vulnerable point, and, simultaneously, our greatest potential. Vulnerable how? I asked. Because through faith, we can accept radical transformations without questioning every detail. And potential, because faith has already trained us to believe in transcendence. Chapter 16, The Last Human Night. It was my last night to decide. The next day, either I would accept ascension, or I would have to find a way to escape the Vatican and join the resistance. I spent hours walking through the Vatican gardens, observing the stars. All my life, they had been distant points of light. Now, I knew that some of them harbored intelligences, actively shaping Earth's destiny. I found the Pope in a small private chapel, praying alone before the altar, when he turned to me. For a moment, I saw the Francis I knew, worried, human, carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Your Holiness, may I ask a question? Of course, my son. Do you still have a choice? Can you still say no? The Pope smiled, but it was a sad smile. Marco, have you ever noticed how, when we truly pray, sometimes we receive answers we didn't expect? Answers that come from a place beyond our understanding? Yes. All my life I believed those answers came from God. And now, I've discovered that maybe they do. Just not in the way I imagined. Do you think they are divine? I think divinity can have many faces, Marco, and maybe our limited understanding of God was just the first step of a much longer journey. Chapter 17, The Decision. The next morning I woke with a strange clarity. During the night, I had made my decision, but not in the way I expected. I didn't wake knowing whether I would accept or refuse ascension. I woke knowing there was a third option. I found Sister Margarita, or the entity that had assumed her form, in the gardens, contemplating the roses that were beginning to wither with winter's arrival. "You have decided," she said without turning. "Yes, but not in the way you expected." Now she turned, and for the first time, I saw something like genuine curiosity in her galactic eyes. "Explain. You want synthesis. You want to combine our spirituality with your technology, but you're doing it through seduction and manipulation. We are doing it through invitation and elevation. No, you're doing it through fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of losing our cosmic relevance." I took a deep breath. But what if there were a truly collaborative way? For the first time since I'd known her, Sister Margarita seemed uncertain. "Continue. You studied our religion, our faith, but you missed a fundamental aspect. True faith requires free choice. Without choice, it's just indoctrination. And your proposal is total transparency, complete revelation. Let humanity see exactly who you are, what you offer, and what it will cost. Then let each person decide individually." Sister Margarita fell silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried harmonies I had never heard before. This was not considered. Our analysis suggested that total transparency would cause panic, war, social collapse. Maybe, or maybe you underestimated our capacity to accept difficult truths when presented with honesty. Chapter 18, The Cosmic Council. What happened next was beyond anything I could have imagined. Sister Margarita led me through Vatican corridors that definitely didn't exist on official maps, descending stairs that seemed to extend much deeper than the architecture would allow. We arrived at a circular chamber where 5 beings waited. Their forms were vaguely humanoid, but clearly not human. Their skin had the translucent quality I had seen in Sister Margarita, and their eyes were windows to the cosmos. "Messenger Benedetti," one of them spoke, "you propose an interesting experiment." "It's not an experiment," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's what you should have done from the beginning. Our predictive models suggested a 73.6% probability of civilizational collapse with full revelation. Your models might be wrong. You're not human. You might not fully understand how we react to truth." Another being manifested. "And if we accept your proposal? If we reveal our presence globally? Then you'll have true allies, not programmed subjects. And if some choose to resist, you'll have to respect that choice. Resistance is inefficient. Resistance is human. And if you truly want synthesis, you need partners, not puppets." The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, the first being spoke. "Your proposal will be taken to the Superior Council. If accepted, the revelation process will begin in 72 terrestrial hours. And if rejected, then you will continue to be gently guided toward ascension, as originally planned." Chapter 19, The Global Ultimatum. 72 hours later, something happened that changed the world forever. Simultaneously, across all time zones, a message appeared on every screen connected to the internet, on every phone, on every electronic device on the planet. The message was simple, direct, and perfectly translated into each local language. Inhabitants of Earth. We are a civilization that evolved in the region you call Alpha Centauri. We have been present on your planet for 6 months, working through your religious institutions to facilitate an evolutionary synthesis process. You have the right to choose whether or not to participate in this process, This message will be followed by a complete transmission explaining our intentions, methods, and objectives. The choice is yours. The world stopped. I was in Cardinal Toretti's office when the transmission began. For 3 hours, and we received a lesson on cosmic history, consciousness evolution, and the specific details of what they called Project Synthesis. They showed their own evolution from a biological species similar to humans to something that transcended the distinction between organic and technological. They explained how they had made contact with other civilizations, always offering the same opportunity for voluntary synthesis. More importantly, they showed examples of civilizations that had refused the offer and continued evolving independently, some achieving technological levels that rivaled the visitors themselves. The choice, the transmission concluded, always was and always will be yours. Chapter 20. The Great Division. The months that followed were the most tumultuous in human history. As expected, the revelation divided humanity into clearly defined factions. The Ascensionists enthusiastically embraced the opportunity for synthesis. Transformation centers were established on every continent, where volunteers underwent a process that elevated them while maintaining their essential humanity, but expanding their capabilities. The Purists completely rejected any form of alien integration, establishing isolated communities dedicated to preserving original humanity. And a third group emerged, the Negotiators, who sought a form of collaboration that didn't involve direct biological alteration. I found myself in a unique position. As the original messenger, both aliens and humans saw me as a bridge between worlds. I became a translator, not just of languages, but of concepts and intentions. Working with an international team of diplomats, scientists, and religious leaders, we helped establish the coexistence protocols, an agreement that guaranteed each human's right to choose their own evolutionary path. Chapter 21. The New World. 5 years have passed since the revelation. The world changed in ways no one could have predicted, but also remained surprisingly human. The Ascensionist cities became centers of technological and spiritual innovation, where elevated humans worked on projects that benefited all humanity. They developed cures for previously incurable diseases, clean energy technologies that solved the climate crisis, and forms of communication that transcended linguistic barriers. The purist communities flourished in their determination to preserve traditional humanity, often achieving their own advances through pure human determination and ingenuity. And the Negotiators built bridges between both worlds, facilitating the exchange of knowledge and resources without compromising the integrity of either side. The Pope, still Francis, but now with a perspective that spanned galaxies, became a voice of unity in a divided world. His homilies spoke about diversity as strength, about how different evolutionary paths could coexist and enrich each other. Chapter 22. Reflections of the Messenger. Today, I sit in the same office where it all began, organizing correspondence that now includes messages from dozens of civilizations scattered across the galaxy. I remained human, that was my choice, but my perspective has expanded in ways I never imagined possible. Sister Margarita still works at the Vatican, but now openly as an ambassador of her species. She has returned to being called by her true name, something unpronounceable that translates roughly as "she who weaves bridges between worlds." Volkov established an institute in St. Petersburg, where elevated and traditional humans work together on research projects that are redefining our understanding of the universe. And me? I continue being a messenger, but now I carry correspondence between worlds, between species, between different versions of humanity that chose distinct paths of evolution. Chapter 23. The Final Letter. Today I received a special letter, not from the Pope, not from the visitors, but from a group of children from a primary school in Mumbai. They had grown up in a world where aliens and humans collaborate openly, where the magic of advanced technology coexists with the simplicity of traditional faith. Their letter was simple, Mr. Marco, thank you for delivering the first letter. Because of you, we grew up in a world where we can choose who we want to be. It was then that I fully understood what had happened. The letter I delivered wasn't about first contacts or alien invasions. It was about preserving the right to choose in an era of inevitable transformation. The visitors could have simply taken control. Their technology was thousands of years more advanced. But they understood something fundamental. A civilization forced to change is not one that evolved. It's one that was conquered. Chapter 24, The Legacy. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had simply delivered the letter, without questioning, without investigating, without demanding transparency. We would probably all be ascended now, living in perfect harmony under the benevolent guidance of our cosmic visitors. Would it be a better existence? Maybe. Free from suffering, ignorance, and human limitations? Certainly. But it wouldn't be our choice. And choice, I discovered, is the essence of humanity. Not our technology, not our intelligence, not even our capacity for faith. Our ability to choose our own destiny, even when that destiny might be imperfect, painful, or limited. The visitors learned this from us. In return, they taught us that evolution doesn't need to be a solitary process, that growth can come through collaboration between species, between worlds, between different forms of consciousness. Epilogue, the eternal messenger. Now, at 60 years old, I still serve as a messenger between worlds. My desk is full of correspondence from places that previously existed only in science fiction, planets where ancient human colonies evolved in unimaginable ways, space stations where different species work together on projects that will benefit the entire galaxy. Earth became known as the planet of choice, the first world where a species undergoing ascension demanded and obtained the right to determine its own evolutionary path. And it all began with a papal letter that was partially written by something that wasn't human. Today, as I organize the day's messages, I find new correspondence that makes me smile. It's from Pope Francis, now almost 100 years old, but still lucid, still human by his own choice, addressed to a young seminarian in one of the new colonies of Proxima Centauri. The letter begins, "My son among the stars, faith knows no borders, knows no species, knows no physical limitations." I smile because I know that every word of